Women over 60. 5 phrases that make men fall deeply in love. Say this, not that. Have you ever said something to a man with the purest intention, and somehow it landed the wrong way? Have you ever tried to show love, but instead he became quiet, distant, almost guarded, as if your words made him feel pressured rather than cherished? If you're over 60, you already know something most younger women haven't learned yet. Love isn't built only through attraction. Love is built through emotional safety. And emotional safety is built through language, through the words you choose in the moments that matter. At 68, Margaret thought she had already mastered communication. She had been married for 40 years, she raised children, she managed conflict, she survived loss. She assumed that if she ever dated again, words would be the easy part. But after she met Robert, she discovered something humbling. Robert was kind, gentle, thoughtful, the kind of man who made her feel calm simply by being in the same room. But he also had one quality that confused her. He moved slowly. Not coldly, not indifferently, slowly. So, Margaret did what many good women do when they want to protect a relationship. She tried to reassure it into safety. She used words to get closeness faster. One evening after dinner, she leaned in and said softly, "I don't want to waste time at our age. I need to know where this is going." She meant well. She thought she was being mature. But Robert's face changed. Not angry, just tight, as if his chest closed a little. He nodded politely, then he kissed her forehead, then he drove home earlier than usual, and for 2 days, silence. Margaret's stomach sank. She replayed her words again and again. What did I say wrong? I was just being honest. When Robert finally called, he didn't blame her. He didn't criticize. He simply said something that changed everything. "I like you more than I've liked anyone in years," he admitted. "But when you said that, I suddenly felt like I was being measured, like I was on a timeline, like I had to prove something quickly or lose you. And instead of making me want to step closer, it made me want to protect myself." That moment taught Margaret something powerful. Some phrases pull love closer, and some phrases quietly push it away. And the difference isn't whether you're loving or not. The difference is whether your words make a man feel safe, respected, and chosen. So in today's video, I'm going to share the 5 phrases that make men fall deeply in love, especially men over 60, because these phrases don't pressure him, test him, or corner him. They do something far more powerful. They activate his heart. They awaken devotion. They make him feel like loving you is not a risk, but a reward. And stay until the end, because phrase number 5 is the one that can transform your relationship overnight, especially if you've been in a cycle of uncertainty, mixed signals, or emotional distance. Subscribe to this channel because we talk about love after 60 with wisdom, dignity, and truth. Now, let's begin. The words that soften a man's nervous system instead of triggering his defenses. Margaret noticed something early on with Robert. The nights he seemed most affectionate weren't the nights she was dressed up. They weren't the nights the date was fancy. They were the nights where she spoke in a way that made him feel like he could exhale. One evening, Robert arrived at her place looking tired. Not sad, not angry, just tired in the way a man looks when he's carrying more than he wants to admit. Margaret could have asked him 20 questions. She could have tried to fix it. She could have reminded him that he could talk to her. She could have tried to pull his vulnerability out of him. Instead, she simply sat next to him, placed her hand gently over his, and said in a calm, warm voice, "You don't have to hold everything alone when you're with me." And Robert's shoulders dropped, like his body heard something his mind didn't know it needed. That kind of sentence, long, gentle, and emotionally steady, does something powerful. It tells a man he can stop performing. It tells him he doesn't have to be impressive. It tells him he doesn't have to be strong every minute of the day.
Now compare that to the kind of sentence women often use, especially when they're trying to be supportive but anxious underneath it. Something like, "Why don't you ever open up?" Or "You never talk to me about what you feel." Those sentences may be honest, but they put him on trial. They make him feel like he's failing. They make him feel like love comes with an exam. So if you want a phrase that makes a man fall deeply in love, speak to his nervous system, not his ego. Speak in a way that makes him feel emotionally safe, not evaluated. When you say slowly and sincerely, "You don't have to carry everything alone when you're with me," you're giving him a kind of relief he rarely receives from anyone else. And men don't forget the woman who makes them feel relieved.
Number 2, the words that make him feel chosen, not used. There's a fear men over 60 rarely admit out loud, but they feel it in their bones the moment they sense it in a relationship. They fear being treated like a solution instead of a person. They fear that a woman isn't truly drawn to who they are, but rather to what they represent: company, stability, a warm body beside her at night, a man to fill an empty seat at dinner. And when a man feels that, even subtly, his heart doesn't open, it closes. Not because he's cruel, but because he's trying to protect the little bit of hope he still has left. Patricia learned this the hard way after her divorce. She didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She was kind, she was generous, she asked thoughtful questions. But she kept hearing the same confusing sentence from men who initially seemed interested. "You're wonderful, but something feels off." At first, she assumed it was her age, or her appearance, or the fact that she'd been single too long. Then one man was brave enough to tell her the truth. He said, gently, "Sometimes I feel like you don't actually like me. I feel like you just like that I'm here." That sentence stung, not because it was insulting, but because it forced Patricia to face something she hadn't realized. In her loneliness, she had begun speaking in a way that made a man feel like he was being recruited, not cherished. Her words were warm, but they were vague. They sounded like relief, not admiration. So she changed the way she expressed affection. And it wasn't about flattery or performance. It was about specificity, about making a man feel uniquely valued, not interchangeable. Instead of saying things like, "I'm just so happy I found someone," she started saying things that made the man in front of her feel personally chosen, like, "I find myself looking forward to hearing your thoughts because the way you see life genuinely fascinates me." Or, "There's something about the way you show up in conversations that makes me feel seen and calm, and I don't take that lightly." That kind of language does something powerful. It tells him he is not simply filling a role in your life. It tells him you are not loving the idea of a relationship, you are loving him. And when a man finally feels that, especially later in life when so many relationships have made him feel replaceable, he starts bonding emotionally without even realizing it. The words that invite commitment instead of pressuring him. One of the biggest mistakes women over 60 make, especially when they meet a good man, is trying to force clarity too early because they're afraid of wasting time. The fear is understandable. At this age, you don't want games. You don't want confusion. You don't want to invest months only to discover he was never serious. So women try to secure the relationship with words. They ask, "Where is this going?" They say, "I need to know what we are." They push for certainty before the emotional connection has had time to build a foundation strong enough to carry it. But here's the part most women don't realize. Those sentences may sound reasonable, but to many men, especially men who have been through divorce, grief, or betrayal, they don't land as maturity. They land as pressure. And pressure doesn't make a man commit. Pressure makes a man retreat. Carol learned how to do it differently after she almost pushed away a man she deeply cared about. She was dating Kenneth, and he moved slowly. He wasn't cold, he was careful. He had been hurt before, and he didn't want to repeat old mistakes. But Carol's anxiety kept creeping in, and her words started coming out sharper than she intended.
One night, she finally said, "I don't understand why you're moving so slow. Are you even serious about me?" Kenneth didn't yell. He didn't insult her, but something in him shut down. His voice got quieter. He said, "I don't know how to respond when I feel like I'm being judged." That sentence hit Carol like a mirror. So instead of interrogating the pace, she began speaking in a way that created safety while still honoring her standards. And one evening, when the moment felt right, she looked at him with warmth, not anxiety, and she said something like, "I really enjoy what we're building, and I'm not trying to rush you, but I do want something meaningful at this stage of my life, so I'd love to understand what you feel we're growing into together at a pace that feels honest for both of us. Do you feel the difference? That isn't a demand. It isn't a test. It's an invitation." It tells him you have standards. It tells him you're emotionally mature. And it tells him that being with you will feel like a partnership, not pressure. Men over 60 respond profoundly to that kind of language because it makes them feel respected rather than cornered. And when a man feels respected, he becomes far more willing to step forward and claim you.
The words that create devotion through appreciation, not flattery. Most men can spot flattery from a mile away, especially older men who've lived long enough to know when someone is trying to say the right thing. Compliments like, "You're so handsome," or "You're so smart," can be sweet, but they don't always create deep love because they often land on the surface. What creates devotion is not flattery. What creates devotion is meaningful appreciation. It's the moment a man realizes that his effort matters to you, that you notice the way he shows up, and that being with you feels emotionally rewarding instead of emotionally draining. Helen understood this only after she saw how differently men responded when she changed her language. She used to compliment men the way most people do, quickly, casually, almost automatically. "You look nice. That was fun. You're great." But what made Richard fall more deeply in love was not casual praise. It was one evening after a difficult week when he had shown up for her quietly, without making a big deal about it. He drove her to an appointment. He checked on her without hovering. He remembered a detail she hadn't even expected him to remember. And Helen didn't just say, "Thank you." She looked at him with sincerity and said something like, "I want you to know that I noticed the way you showed up for me this week, even when you had your own stress, and it made me feel deeply cared for in a way I don't take for granted." That's a sentence with weight. It doesn't stroke his ego, it touches his heart, because it tells him your effort lands. It tells him loving me is safe. It tells him you won't be taken for granted. And when a man hears that, especially a man who has spent years feeling unappreciated, criticized, or invisible, something inside him shifts. He doesn't just want to keep dating you, he wants to protect you. He wants to invest. He wants to stay. Appreciation creates devotion because it makes him feel emotionally successful in your presence. And no man can resist the woman who makes him feel like his love actually matters.